The views expressed on the Final Straw Radio do not necessarily reflect those of Asheville FM, Friends of Community Radio, or any of the affiliate radio stations airing the show. From the studios of WSFM-LP 103.3 in Asheville, North Carolina, this is the Final Straw, and I'm Burst of Goodness. This show will later be archived at thefinalstrawradio.noblogs.org, and you can email us with questions or suggestions at thefinalstrawradio@riseup.net. Also, if you're interested in rebroadcasting any episode or segment, you're free to do so. Just send us an email to let us know, and check out our archive.org collection for the radio-friendly copies. If you care to, you can send us letters at The Final Straw Radio, care of Asheville FM, 864 Haywood Road, Asheville, North Carolina, 28806. The show is brought to you by Firestorm Books and Coffee. Located at 610 Haywood Road, Firestorm Books and Coffee is a worker-owned cooperative in Asheville, specializing in offbeat, underground, and independent literature. You can find a sample of Firestorm's catalog of books and zines, plus a full calendar of events at their website, firestorm.coop. This week, we're featuring an interview produced by comrades from Anarchistisches Radio Berlin with Elisa. Elisa has been involved in the anarchist movement for a long time, and she is one of the co-founders of Brazilian Indymedia, which in turn is one of the earliest counter-information projects using that name and mode of Indymedia. In the conversation, they talk about the political developments in Brazil of the last years, as well as how the autonomous movements have been reacting to them. More audio from ARadio Berlin can be found at aradio.blogsport.de. ARadio Berlin is a member of the International Anarchist Radio Network. That produces Bad News, Angry Voices from Around the World, a monthly English-language bulletin from many radio projects around the world. This conversation we're airing was recorded in July of 2017. We air this audio in the wake of the German government raiding and shutting down the website linksuntn.indymedia.org. That's linksuntn.indymedia.org. Allegedly for being infrastructure used in the organizing of the G20 Hamburg protests and other mass mobilizations and direct actions. Autonomous media is super important, and we suggest that you check out the Crime Think article on the subject, available in the show notes.
Firstly, as part of our announcement section, much love and solidarity to those fighting Nazis in Berkeley today. We are thinking of you here. Stay safe out there in the streets. On Tuesday, August 29th at the Double Crown, there will be a benefit show, barbecue, and cake auction for grand jury resistor Katie Yao. Barbecue sandwiches start at 6 p.m. with vegan and non-vegan options for all you cats, with a cake auction to follow. Then music will commence with Bob Boob, Nomadic War Machine, Wyatt Earth and the Gold Standard, Snake Musk, and Darien. All proceeds will benefit our brave comrade fighting state oppression and putting her safety and freedom on the line by doing so.
On Sunday, September 3rd at 6 p.m. at Firestorm Books and Coffee, Blue Ridge Anarchist Black Cross will be hosting a letter writing event. BRABC invites you to come down for the monthly event. Sit a spell. Write some letters to political prisoners or just anyone behind bars. Envelopes, stamps, addresses, paper, and pens are all provided, and snacks are a frequent occurrence. More information is available at brabc.blackblogs.org.
And also, because Asheville loves a benefit show, there will be a night of laughs and comedy at the Mothlight on Monday, September 4th at 9 p.m. This event is described as an evening of comedy by some of #Asheville's leading comedians, Minori Hines, Kelly Morgan, Moira Gorey, and Dana Williams. 9 p.m. Labor Day 2017 at the Mothlight in West Asheville. The proceeds will go to help cover legal and travel costs for defendants from the mass arrest at the protests against Donald Trump's inauguration in Washington, D.C. on January 20th, 2017. More info on the case at defendj20resistance.org. This is hosted by Asheville's own Blue Ridge Anarchist Black Cross, and to see the Facebook event, you can search Comedy Benefit for J20 Defendants on that beast. Here is an announcement on behalf of Joshua Zero Cartret, who is an incarcerated member of IWOC, the Incarcerated Workers Organizing Committee, and an anarchist. From his support page, quote, "After years of struggling behind bars for prison abolition and against white supremacy, Joshua Zero Cartret will be returning to the community sometime in the next few weeks. But the struggle continues. Let's make sure our comrade who has been so important in the fight against white supremacy and the prison industrial complex in Oregon has the chance they deserve to build a life beyond prison walls. While incarcerated, Josh was an active member of the IWW's Incarcerated Workers Organizing Committee, or IWOC, and the founding member of the Anarchist Black Cross Oregon Prison Chapter. Over the years, Josh encouraged dozens of prisoners around the state of Oregon to contribute to the Oregon Prisoner Forum, a monthly newsletter that circulates articles and information from incarcerated people. Josh also became an outspoken anti-racist and spent years mentoring incarcerated youth to escape the trappings of the white supremacist movement. For his organizing, he was repeatedly targeted by organized white supremacist gangs with death threats, forcing him to spend much of his time in protected custody or solitary confinement. Across the state, Josh was able to form several study groups that provided both basic civil rights education as well as more in-depth political analysis for prisoners. Josh's educational work has empowered prisoners from across the state to take steps towards self-advocacy and to take a stand to improve the deplorable conditions they are subjected to. On September 9, 2016, prisoners across the country self-organized to take a historic stand against prison slavery and its continuation of institutionalized white supremacy and genocide. Oregon joined other states across the country in the wave of resistance that worked its way into institution after institution. As a result of the subsequent wave of repression across the country, Josh was subjected to over 6 months of solitary confinement. When prison officials found him to be working to, quote, orchestrate Oregon prison inmates to become involved in a massive prison work stoppage in all institutions, end quote, where the, quote, purpose of these prisons' work stoppage was to shut down the daily operations of the institutions based on the inmates' perception that institutions utilize inmate labor for capitalist needs, end quote. White supremacists openly organize. Fascist violence creeps back into the commonplace, and the reactionaries are all abuzz. In this age, we have an obligation to support those who contest the fascist creep in the belly of the beast, where it festers and finds its most fertile recruiting grounds. Not only does this prison industrial complex act not only as a coercive and disciplinary institution created to enact and legitimize violence against marginalized communities, it serves as an incubation chamber for supremacist ideology and street violence by routinely allowing open white supremacist gangs to promote their toxic ideas, thus recruit more henchmen and build lucrative criminal syndicate networks within and outside its walls. Anti-racists and anti-fascists have an obligation to support those on the inside, the ones engaged in a life or death battle against these forces, and to welcome back our comrades when they re-enter our communities. To support your fellow worker, fellow anti-racist, anti-capitalist, and anarchist Joshua Ames Cartret, you can go to rally.org and search anti-racist IWOC to find his support page. And now some words from anarchist prisoner Sean Swain.
What you say, what you say, what you say, what? We'll call like a what?
I think that in the wake of Charlottesville, we need to decide if we're against racists or if we're against racism. If we're against racists rather than being against racism, then our strategy is going to look much different. If we're against racists, we're going to show up wherever they are and we're going to shout them down. When things escalate, we're going to fight them. Then, at the end of the day, those racists we shouted down and beat up are going to limp home, hating us even more than they did when they got up in the morning. And they're going to be all the more convinced of how evil we are and how persecuted they are. And probably they'll put together some slick recruitment videos that show us being rude and violent and not letting them talk. Recruitment videos that will resonate with those poor persecuted white males in high schools in the rural areas of the American Trump Belt. So the end result of being against racists is an increase in the number of racists, which likely correlates to an increase in racist attacks and momentum for the racist cause generally. This is a strategy that reminds me a great deal of the approach to crime taken by poor deluded hierarchs, being against it in such an unimaginative way as to continually increase the thing they're against. Needless to say, I'm in favor of another approach. The fact is, the vast majority of racists of every stripe have, themselves, an experience of the world that is valid to them. To take an example from the movie Crash about a decade ago, Sandra Bullock played a character who had been victimized by two black youth. Thereafter, when walking down a sidewalk and seeing black men walking in her direction, she would cross the street and avoid them. Is that racist? Sure. But in the mind of that character, when she sees black men, she's reminded of the previous trauma, and she's responding to that previous trauma. In so doing, she's drawing a false conclusion that it was the blackness of the black youth that distinguished those who hurt her, and she paints everyone black with the same brush. But her experience is valid to her. So if we respond by pointing at her and screaming racist when she crosses the street, and if we get confrontational with her, we are quite unlikely to provoke any kind of deep introspection on her part. We probably won't unpack any of her baggage or point out to her the irrational association that she has made in order to draw the conclusions about race that she has drawn. She'll just feel more hateful and get better at hiding it. Our actions will simply say to her that her experience is not valid, and she'll ignore us because her experience is valid to her. Now, that's not to say that every single Nazi at an alt-right rally has been carjacked at gunpoint by the rapper Ludacris like Sandra Bullock's character was. I'm not saying that. But what I'm suggesting is that if we ever want to get anywhere, if we ever want to influence how these angry white men think, we have to approach the situation differently. We have to give them the benefit of the doubt that most of them are not liars, but are generally sincere and really believe what they are espousing. Most of them. And we have to accept that whatever their experience is, it is valid to them. They really believe that Mexican rapists are pouring into the country. They really believe that affirmative action gave white jobs to black people. They really believe there is a Jewish plot to bring down the superior white race by promoting rap music and ebonics and homosexuality from Hollywood. They really believe their lives and loved ones and their values and their way of life is under assault by destructive forces that are totally foreign to them. They aren't just saying that. They really believe that. And they believe it with such an intensity that they're willing to drive cars into crowds of their enemy, or blow up a bank, or blow up a courthouse, or stockpile guns and chicken noodle soup. So we can go after the racists and leave the mental machinery of their racism undisturbed, or we can do the much harder work of attempting to address the problem of their racism, which can only be done by unpacking all of the baggage they've piled up, the leaps in logic, the irrational associations, the false facts, and so on. What do I know? But I've always been in favor of letting stupid people talk. Let them talk. Challenge David Duke to sit down and a debate with Ward Churchill or Angela Davis. Stream it on YouTube for angry white men everywhere to watch. I'm not afraid of Nazis' ideas being more sensible or appealing than mine. I don't feel that the vindication of my ideas requires me to silence my opponent the way that the fascist state so often silences me. I feel absolutely certain that in the so-called marketplace of ideas, the anarchist model is far more superior to the repainted Mondo rust bucket retread that the Nazis and others are pushing. We should be more willing to let our ideas speak for themselves. Let's oppose racism rather than racists, and win. This is anarchist prisoner Sean Swain from Warren Correctional in Lebanon, Ohio. If you're listening, you are the resistance.
You can write to Sean Swain at Sean Swain 243-205, Warren CI, P.O. Box 120, 5787 State Route 63, Lebanon, Ohio 45036. Updates on his situation and more writings by Sean can be found at seanswain.org.
Sagen Sie jetzt mal bitte
Anarchie.
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 Ob geschichtlich oder brandaktuell,
Mit Berichten und Interviews, mit Beiträgen und Collagen
beleuchtet das Anarchistische Radio Berlin das Phänomen des Anarchismus.
Viva Anarchie!
In June, we talked to Elisa from the Indymedia collective of São Paulo, Brazil. Elisa has been involved in the anarchist movement for a long time and is one of the co-founders of the Brazilian Indymedia, which in turn is one of the earliest counter-information projects using the name and mode of Indymedia. In the conversation, we talked about the political developments in Brazil in the recent years, as well as how the autonomous movements have been reacting to them. Okay, I'm here with Elisa from the São Paulo Indymedia, and I wanted to ask you about your collective and also the situation in Brazil. So maybe you can start with introducing yourself and the group, and maybe tell us also how Indymedia works in São Paulo.
Okay. So I am Elisa from Indymedia Collective São Paulo. Indymedia São Paulo is part of the network of Indymedia Brazil. When we started in 2001, we didn't have a structure to have one page for each collective, and so we decided to run just one page and put efforts in just to keep one server and one page. That was a lot, and that was how it started. From 2001 to 2017, it's a long time. We had a lot of changes. Basically, Indymedia started as answer for our collectives because we was organized in affinity groups working on this struggle against the globalization. That is not against the globalization right now, it is against the capitalism. And we would like to tell our side of the history because on the news we just saw like crazy people destroying the streets and doing demonstrations that are bad for the car traffic. And then we started with Indymedia in 2001 and was on the protests against the free trade area of the Americans, and was basically 3 people, and one was arrested, the other one went to the doctor because the police hit her, and it was just one to put everything on the web page, and then we call more people for action and help on Indymedia. And then it starts to grow from São Paulo to Rio de Janeiro, Belo Horizonte, Brasília, Goiânia, and to the north, to the Amazon, and Porto Alegre. At some point we had like 15 collectives. Right now we have 3, 4, 5, and other 2 that are under formation. We just migrate our web page from the old Mir that was building for Indymedia to a Drupal web page. For now it's like this, it's working like this.
And what kind of media do you put out? Is it?
Yeah, on the past we have done podcastings and video. We work a lot with video because Brazilians are crazy about the image, and a lot of photos and also text. And you used to have this news to glue on the streets to paste on the bus stops, this kind of thing, and also a newspaper. But right now what we have are videos and coverage of the demonstrations. We also do live streams and text it from what is going on.
Coming to like the situation in Brazil, I think it's very complicated, and we see for a few years now a lot of really big things happening in the political system, but also with the mega events that happened and the shifts that come with these events. Could you, for someone who is not familiar what is going on, try to make a brief overview? What's the political situation?
How would be brief? So hard. Let's see. In 2003, we had this guy that it was called a worker that was fighting for the leftists, and he finally arrived on the power. It was Lula time, after 20 years running and always been put away. he arrived on the power, and some of us that, like not everybody from Indymedia is anarchist, but some of us are, we finally said, okay, now we're gonna finish with this joke, because there is no leftist on this party system that we have today. So let's show for them that this don't exist. And then Lula arrived on the power, and very easily he co-opted all the social movements that we had in Brazil at that time, and put them to work with the government and help them. And this put most of the people of these main movements out of the street, and for a long time. So he basically destroyed the base of these old social movements like MST and these landless and homeless movements. And he also...
Lula is part of the PT, the
Lula
Workers'
is part
Party.
of the Workers' Party. And we saw a lot of people leaving the street to work on the government, because they thought that they could hack the government. They could hack the structure. And we heard about this, like people was like, no, we are inside, they're gonna hack this. And we, like, if you understand a little bit about politics, you know that this is not what will happen. We will be hacked, and not we will hack. And that was what happened. For 12 years we had the PT on the power, and was two campaign from Lula, and then one and almost half from Dilma. And that was the candidate that Lula indicates, and it could be anyone, because he can put everybody that he wants on the power. And Dilma she won the last election, and the right-wing party didn't like this. If you say that there was the right-wing party, they will say we are not right-wing, because they don't agree that they are right-wing. But basically the elite party didn't like this, and started to do everything that was possible to put her out until they get this impeachment process that was based in facts that really don't make any sense. And she was judged by like the worst kind of politicians that we have here. All of them are involved in corruption, and with proofs that is like everywhere. It's very easy to connect them with the corruption case, because they was there. And she was impeachment, and she's out of the power, and the guy that was her vice,
the vice president?
Yeah.
He got into power then.
He got into power. His name is Temer. And the guy is from the PMDB. Is the party that is on the power since ever, because they was the center. Like, doesn't matter who will be the president, they always would be the vice. And they also control the chamber and the Senate. That's very bad. And so when this process against Dilma started, they just turned their face, and of course that everybody knows this, that they would never support her and they would fight against her, and that was what happened. And basically this party followed with the program that was started before PT, and the PT just continued, that was to destroy the social structure that we had on the country, like to destroy the workers' rights and the welfare system that we have, and all these things. And so when Dilma was put out of the power, all the PT base and all the PT groups or people that supports PT went to the streets to say that there was a coup. Of course, that, on my opinion, was a coup. But was something that we could see coming. And so if we could see that coming, we could avoid this. And then they was just like, pay attention, keep the power for them. And so it's hard to talk about this in English.
No, I can imagine. Thanks.
No, but I can continue. There are more.
So you mentioned that the general government approach was this kind of erosion of social rights, the environmental rights, the indigenous rights, all these protections. And I would assume also this kind of neoliberal ideology of transforming the economy to the needs of the global market. It sounds kind of like that the PT government was not really ever threatening this process, but still the coup happened. And this is something that is maybe a bit awkward to understand why there still was this coup. If the PT government, were they kind of still a threat to the process, or is it more that it's about personal power that somebody should, or yeah, do you know what I mean? It's
yeah. From my point of view, the PT never attacked this system, this capitalist system. Basically, what PT have done was to bring capitalism for everybody in Brazil, because we didn't have this before PT. Like, we didn't have power of consumption. Basically, what PT have done was to stabilize the economy and put some money in the lower level classes, like the minimum money, and this already increased a lot of the consumption power that they had. Like, people didn't have much money to get food, and with this Bolsa Família program, they start to receive money just to keep the kids on the school. That was like just basically, and with this and increasing the power of consumption, PT enlarged the middle class, and that was the problem. If you just enlarge the middle class and you don't educate these people, they will fight against you, because they don't like you. They want to be as the next class that they can see. And on the PT government, they saw the top level classes just going far and more far away from them, and they just jumped for the middle class. And the middle class that was already there don't like to see poor people come. They don't like to have poor people on the airports. They don't like to convive with these people. So they start to fight against the government, because they don't want to be on the plane with the girl that cleaned my house, because now she has money to get the ticket for the plane. And so they start to fight against PT, because they didn't saw that a way to arrive on the next class, social class, and so started this fight. PT never was a threat against this status quo. Basically, what they have done was the minimal for balance of the classes and take people out from the poverty that was like the lower level. And for some classes, this is not good. Basically, there was people that was unsatisfied with them for ages. And what we learned from these cases of corruption was that PT was involved in all the cases also, as everybody, because the politics was based on this. But they was changed the system, was like they was institutionalizing things. And they was getting a lot of money. And so rich people don't like to see these guys involved with a lot of money. So this can be one of the reasons that why they are fighting against PT, but there are much more.
Yeah. You mentioned that with PT there was this cooptation of the movements, and basically you could maybe say pacification of the movements by involving them in the state. So now that PT is away, do you see already as a tendency what the state is now doing with the movements, or what are the movements doing also? Are they forming back up, or yeah? Yeah,
PT was part of the bad word that they have done was this pacification of the social movements. Maybe this was an agreement with the power, like we're gonna arrive on the power, but we're gonna put these people out from the streets. And we're gonna be here for a while, and they will be out of the streets, so we can grow the economy. And this destroyed the base, because they wasn't working on the bases anymore. And what happened after the coup was, okay, let's go to the street. And what is the youth there is no youth anymore. Because PT cannot put young people on the streets anymore. Like, they have a few people, but it's not like in the past. And people that have grown in the past 12 years, they are, of course, against the government. This is basically what you want. The kid that saw you doing all this on the politics agree with you, this will not happen. And they don't realize this. And they never changed the educational system. They never changed the media. Like, we don't have a law on the media here. We have like oligopolies that controls everything. But they work as a monopoly. I read this week. They work just like a block to pass whatever they want. They put the president that they want. They change everything that they can. And this is something that we was people was expecting PT to change, and they didn't touch on this. And now they are like just passing what we expected. If you don't change the media will be against you. And that's what is going on. And now on the street, the people that are against Temer, we have, like, most of the people hate Temer, like in every classes. The point is, they don't want to be on the street with PT. So PT goes to the street with the landless movement, the MST, the National Students Union, that is totally like out of the left, in my opinion. And some other groups and the unions, the central unions, but they don't agree with other leftist parties, like the PSOL and PSTU, they don't agree, they can't be on the same. And we have like two fronts right now, that is this with PT, that is called Frente do Povo Sem Medo. I don't remember the names. And you also have this with the MTST, that's the homeless movement, and the PSOL, PSTU, and other parties on the other side. Like, they are both fighting for direct elections, but they are not together. So how they want to change something, like they have the same subject, but they can be on the street together. And this is not for fight, it's like, I have been on the past demonstrations in São Paulo, it's like a party. They do musical shows, and they have people drink beer and barbecue and all these things. It's something that they have won the elections just because Temer, the president right now, was very stupid and was recorded asking to a very famous empresário from the JBS company. He was asking the guy to give money for another politician that is arrested, and just to keep his mouth closed. And like, there is the record of this. Of course, that Temer is involved in corruption, so everybody wants him out of the power. Okay, but who will be on the power? If he leaves right now, we could have an undirected election that would be on the hand of the judiciary system to appoint someone to assume into the next year that we're gonna have the elections. But right now, like, the hope of PT and some other people is to put Lula again on the power. And this will not happen, or this will not change nothing.
This week, we're featuring an interview produced by comrades from Anarchistisches Radio Berlin with Elisa. Elisa has been involved in the anarchist movement for a long time, and she is one of the co-founders of Brazilian Indymedia. On the subject of autonomous and anarchist media initiatives, ARadio Berlin is also a member of the Channel Zero network of English-language anarchist radio and podcast projects. Along these lines, we also want to share the following jingle from Rust Belt Abolition Radio, another member of CZN. Check out our 24/7 audio stream at channelzeronetwork.com.
How can we imagine a world beyond prisons and police, borders and surveillance?
Rust Belt Abolition Radio is an abolitionist media and movement building project based in Detroit, Michigan.
Each monthly episode amplifies the voices of those impacted by mass incarceration and explores ongoing work in the movement to abolish the carceral state and racial capitalism.
Tune in to Rust Belt Abolition Radio here on the Channel Zero network and visit www.rustbeltradio.org to learn more.
And you mentioned that there is activity in the streets, like demos and things, and people are not involved with the PT are also in the streets. Do you see a certain current that are with these people that are not aligned with any party? I mean, I know that there's the anarchist movement, but I imagine there's also beyond that people rioting or going to the streets. And do you see, because they are against the PT government, because they lived under it, but they're also against the current one, but do you see that they have some, or is it possible for the anarchist or autonomous movements to connect with those people also, or are they in that sense apolitical and just in the streets?
Yeah, there is all kind of people on the street. There are these non-political ones that just learn what political is in 2013, and so they basically went to the street and tried to start something. But if you have a party flag or something like this, they will run away or beat on you. But they also don't like nothing that it looks like leftist. Okay. That was the main thing that the media and these social networks have done on the past 2 or 3 years. They spread this news that PT was on the left, that for me is a joke. And so these new people hate everything that is from the left. And they always come, you are a communist and we hate communists. Come on, you don't have any idea about what is this. And so don't start like this. Because like in 2013 we had these big demonstrations, like mass demonstrations for the bus fare that was raised in São Paulo, and the movement from the Free Pass movement started to do big demonstrations. This spread all the country, and this put a lot of people that never have been on the streets, and it was people without political background. And so when we start to say, hey, Free Press movement is a leftist movement, they get crazy because they didn't realize that. And I say, hey, you don't see that to fight against the bus fare is a leftist demand, because why rich people would fight against this? They don't get the bus. And it was really funny to see. And it was good because we could involve a lot of new people, young people that come to this autonomous movement network and start to work with this. But there are a lot of them that are just jumping for the right wing because they conclude if PT is the left, I'm against this, so I should be on the right. Because they didn't understand that it was like a big spectrum. It was just one side or the other. And this is also part of the job that PT have done, because since PT is out of the power, he's just telling, if you are not with us, we are against us, so we are from the right. And I say, come on, anarchists are not on the right. So you should not put us on the same field of these guys that are in the power, because this don't make any sense. But they don't know how to dialogue with other groups, and this is hard.
They try to have a monopoly on the left.
So the autonomous movement and the anarchist movement on this situation is like, we are not that big and we are not a unit movement, so we don't agree in everything. On big demonstrations like the April 28th, that was the general strike, was called by the PT base and the unions, and it was amazing because it was like a call from all the unions. But why this? Because they are passing a law that will destroy the welfare states, that also will take out the money from the unions. So the unions put everybody that they could on the street to fight against this. And it was like fucking massive. It was like the whole country, everybody was on the street. And what the anarchists have done, they call a block on the center of the town and start a demonstration just with the people that are in any of these unions or in any of these parties that would be on the streets. And they also have this autonomous group of teachers that also call for a demonstration. And basically the autonomous movement will start to leave the center of the town to go to the concentration where there was the big parties and these things. And there was a lot of antifas and black blocs and basically families that don't agree with any parties, they joined the autonomous movement. That was nice. And was like the first time in my life that I saw a black bloc destroying a bank, and the whole demonstration was clapping for them, like giving support. I never saw that. Like normally people say, no, don't do this, don't destroy. And on this demonstration, everybody was so pissed that they helped, like, let's do this. And that was a change, because this normally don't happen. Like, if it was just PT on the demonstration, the PT security guys would fight against the black blocs. But as it was a massive demonstration, like people protect the black blocs, that was crazy. Totally out of mind. It was like, oh, you see, they are not fighting against them. And we was doing the coverage for Indymedia. It was there like, oh, families taking pictures of the black blocs. That was nice.
That's cool.
And in all these demonstrations that they are doing against the Temer president, it's like PT, the car of sound, and a lot of politicians from PT and blah, blah, blah. And so these autonomous groups arrive there just to fight against them on the middle of their protest, and or start something like on this first protest against Temer, that was when they released the audio from here. Some kids had like a flag. It's not a flag, uma faixa.
Like a banner?
A banner. And telling that elections don't change nothing. We are ungovernable.
I saw it.
And they start to walk, and people look for the parties and look for them and walk with them. Like, is this? Doesn't matter who is on the power. The system has a problem, and we should change. If you really want to change something, destroy the system and try to build something new. That's what we would like to see. Like, propose something. Okay, if you want to keep this system with parties and everything, okay, tell us what is the change. What are you gonna do to change? Because to just come back to the power to do nothing, you already, like, PT already passed 12 years on the power and really don't change the structure.
Yeah.
So what comes next?
So you could maybe describe the situation for the autonomous movement. That's this two-way fight, that on the one hand you have the institutionalized left with the PT, on the other side all the right-wing in the state and the current power, and they are fighting also among themselves. So what do you think is like or what do you see as a kind of, is there some kind of strategy from the movement how to react with this situation or act with the situation? Is there do you see some development, or is there some discussions about how to behave now in this situation where you have the struggle between the parties on the one hand, and then of course I assume a lot of repression for anything that is autonomous?
Yeah, the repression didn't start today, and it didn't start with this fight. During the PT government, we had the World Cup and the Olympics, and like the fight against us was like massive. The power that the police has now after these big events are much more than what we had in 2001 when we started with this anti-globalization movement. And this started with Dilma government. Okay? She bought the cars, like she gave money for the police to build this structure. And it's very funny to see that now PT is complaining about the violence of the police. Come on. We are passing this like for ages, and include on Dilma government, like during the Free Pass movement raised in 2003, the repression was brutal. And there was anyone from PT on the street helping us or try to fight against the police, telling that it wasn't good, because we also had PT on the city hall in São Paulo on that time. The guy lost the election last year. And he didn't realize right now why he lost the election, because he was a very good mayor. But he don't understand what we do here. And it's funny to see that right after the PT left the government, The police also invaded their unions and their meetings and arrest them and beat them as they are doing with us. And now they ask us for support and all these things and say, that's funny. Because when the police was killing us on the World Cup, nobody was on the street to protect us, and there was nothing to do with PT. They don't assume, they blame us to help the right wing against Dilma. That's a joke. And what I see now is that the autonomous movement is doing what they always have done. They are still on their local basis, working with their social groups and social movements. Here in São Paulo, we have all this crackland problem that is just growing with this new mayor that wants to clean the city. He wants to make the city beautiful, so he don't want to see any poor people on the street. So he invaded the crackland, that is an area on downtown, on the neighborhood of Campos Elíseos. And on 21 of May, the police invaded the place. It was a Sunday morning, and it was like 500 police guys, like from the elite from the police. And they start to destroy the buildings with people inside. They throw bombs. There was guys snipers from the buildings. It was like a war operation. Like hours after, the mayor was on the streets telling, I finished with the crackland. That is a problem that we have on the city for 20 years. Of course that he didn't finish, and this will never finish like this. So the people just move away to other place, other streets. The problem still exists, and it's not a police problem, because this is much bigger, and it's not a drug problem. Like, we are not fighting against the traffickers. We are fighting against people that lives on the street. And that area is an area that is now buying by an insurance company that is from one of the main banks from Brazil. And the whole thing is about gentrification of the area. They want to take people outside from there because the downtown is not for poor people. They want to put poor people on the suburbs where people cannot see them. And a lot of autonomous movements are working with these people. They already have been working with them for decades. They are there since ever. And we have other people on unions and in other social movements, doing radio or doing other things like Free Pass movement. And the students from 2016, it was 2016?
That occupied 15, 16. I came a little bit too late when I was here.
It was so nice.
So you could say that the autonomous movement is continuing in their efforts of mutual aid and direct action on the base, and not, I mean, it sounds like the situation now didn't, in that way, there's no opening for having some intervention on a bigger scale, it sounds like, because you have this fight between the powers, but the autonomous movement can only continue to work on the base, and there's not like a window opening now as in a political view there is. Of course, that if you see a lot of people that are not satisfied with the right or the institutional left, this is an open window for the autonomous movement. But how to work with this? That is the same question from 2003. When PT arrived on the power, I was like very happy. Finally, we're gonna bring all the people that came from our side. But we wasn't prepared for that, because people start to get upset with PT on the power and they leave PT and they found another party. And I said, no, that's not the answer. You should finally work in another level. Party is not the answer for this. But we are not very well organized to give workshops or to give political formation. Like, this is a problem here. We should give more political education for people. We are not like Argentina, and we don't have an answer for this. Brazil don't have this history. We have a history of struggle, but it is not connected. We have small struggles everywhere since the country was invaded by the Portuguese.
but we don't have connection in these struggles, because of the size of the country that is so continental that is impossible to connect. But with the internet, this could be better. Yeah, it could work. But then we can be arrested under this terrorist law that Dilma passed. That now we have this on the hand of a crazy guy that are basically destroy everything that wasn't just from PT, like this welfare state that was since the 50s have been destroyed. And what we see that is something that can aggregate all kind of leftists is to fight against this destruction of the previdenciary system that is running right now, because this will destroy the welfare system forever, and we take took ages to arrive on this stage, and now we're gonna lose everything. And there is a topic that we could put everybody together, the autonomous and this institutional left. But then we go to the street of the institutional left. What they do is just to promote another politician, because they just think about elections. So it's hard.
Yeah, I think I'm done with my questions. Maybe do you see any perspective or what do you expect for the rest of this year, or any outlook?
We expect them to pass this Mundial Bank agenda, because this is clear, something that comes from the international, let's stop with this play of have a welfare system in Brazil. This is not good for the economy, and they will follow the agenda, and it doesn't matter who would be in power. Right now, PT is not supporting the direct election as they are telling on the street, because this is not good for them. The good for them is to have an indirect election and so put another person in 2008. And that's really bad, because on the past months, what we saw was basically the destruction of the welfare system. The indigenous movement is suffering a lot, because the demarcation of their lands also stopped, and it's not only stopped, they are reviewing the past ones, oh no, this wasn't good, let's take this out. Because in Brazil we have what we call BBB, that is the bullet, the Bible, and
bullet, Bible, and
boi.
Bulls.
Bulls. Because are the ruralists that basically wants to destroy everything that is possible, like the Amazon. They just released 2 weeks ago. There is a forest in Pará that was protecting and everything. So in the middle of this crisis between the right and the institutional, the left institutional, they start to pass all kind of bad projects that they can. So they cut in half that forest in Pará, because of course they need more space for bulls. So they start with this, and you have these crazy Christians that are on the power also, that wants to stop with all kind of education against homophobia and against racism. And so against the abortion, everything that they could. It's like a retrocess. It's like to come back to 40 years ago. And on the indigenous also.
So you just see really, really bad times ahead.
Yeah, but bad times are good for us, to organize for mobilization, because it's so fucking bad that it's impossible that the people don't feel this. They could feel this and go to the streets and raise it. If you don't agree with what is going on, you don't need to learn much about politics. Just start to talk with your friends and go to the streets, start to organize your neighborhood.
Then maybe one final question, because it almost seems like a hubris of the elite that they think they can do this now and there will not be massive resistance. But do you think that they believe that with this militarization of the police that they can force this and be able to withstand the resistance and suppress it? Or are they maybe really naive, thinking that they can do this and people will swallow it? It's a really tough question, but it's just popped out now in my head.
I really hope that people are not just keeping watching TV and see that there is nothing to do. What is basically happening right now? Yesterday, we had this votation that was about to caçar. Como é caçar? To stop
kill the mandate of the
Dilma Temer, and it didn't pass it. So Temer will continue on the power. And we have proofs. The proofs are everywhere that he was involved in corruption, and there is no proof about Dilma. Not clear like that. And people are not on the street. I can't see anyone here. And during the impeachment time was amazing because the media was putting a lot of efforts against Dilma that in everywhere there was people talking about politics and just against her. And the media has a big hole on this whole situation. If the media think that now they put people on the street and this could be profitable for them, they would do this. And that's why I still continue on Indymedia after all these years, because the media problem wasn't solved here, and I think that in a lot of places also. We don't have our media, and the media still have a lot of power.
Yeah. So since there seems to be kind of an alliance between Globo and the Temer party...
No, it's not now. Now, I don't know if it is Globo with Temer, because Globo was the main company that released what was going on with Temer. So Globo fight against Temer and also burn one of the right-wing candidates that was Aécio Neves. Why they have done this? Because there was bigger interest behind that. Why Globo is helping to destroy these two guys? Because they want to put the other guys on the power. And who are these guys? And what kind of role they will play in this? That's the thing that we should pay attention right now. Who is behind this? Because Globo never do this, never do nothing alone. They have a lot of politicians behind them and also international interest on this. The guy that released the talks with Temer, he's based in US and most of his companies running there. Why he have done this? And to pay attention to this is something that we should do.
Okay. If you have anything to add, feel free. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
And good luck.
More audio from ARadio Berlin can be found at aradio.blogsport.de. ARadio Berlin is a member of the International Anarchist Radio Network. That produces Bad News, Angry Voices from Around the World, a monthly English-language bulletin from many radio projects around the world. From the studios of WSFM-LP 103.3 in Asheville, North Carolina, this is The Final Straw, and I'm Burst of Goodness. This show will later be archived at thefinalstrawradio.noblogs.org, and you can email us with questions or suggestions at thefinalstrawradio@riseup.net. Also, if you're interested in rebroadcasting any episode or segment, you're free to do so. Just send us an email to let us know, and check out our archive.org collection for the radio-friendly copies. If you care to, you can send us letters at The Final Straw Radio, care of Asheville FM, 864 Haywood Road, Asheville, North Carolina 28806. The show is brought to you by Firestorm Books and Coffee. Located at 610 Haywood Road, Firestorm Books and Coffee is a worker-owned cooperative in Asheville specializing in offbeat, underground, and independent literature. You can find a sample of Firestorm's catalog of books and zines, plus a full calendar of events at their website, firestorm.coop. If you're listening live, stay tuned for Wordplay with Jeff and Lockie.